The seven laws are things that are people respect, and sometimes there's diversity, but they are wachante wachante oganake is generosity. Wowa is compassion. Wowa unia is respect for all of creation. Wowachin tanka is to have a great mind. Wowachwala is humility, state of silence, being humble, and no one is above another. And Wohitika is courage, bravery, principled, and being disciplined. And Woksape is wisdom and understanding.
The seven laws, from my understanding, are laws that our people were given to live by. Some people call them values or virtues, but they're related, I think, to values and virtues. But these are laws that we are to abide by in order to live a virtuous and wholesome life. So there, and I think other indigenous peoples or native tribes have similar values or laws to abide by, and they may vary, but I think they may be similar as well. So Wachante Obanake is generosity that we share with all of our relatives, whether it be knowledge or material goods or just helping people along in life. Wawa Ushila is compassion, and that helps us to relate to others that we're not above others or we don't know more. And if people make mistakes, that's human nature, and that we can't always judge or criticize. Wawa Uniha is respect for all creation. Um, no one is above the other, and we as humans are equal in all of creation. We're not above the animal nation or the plants, or the earth. So we have respect for all life. Wowa Chitanka is to have a great mind, to observe, to learn from others, from nature, and to basically have good thoughts and to think before we take action. Wawahwala is humility, to have silence, to listen, and again, not to be kind of a know-it-all or think that our way of thinking or doing is better than others. Wo uhitike, to have courage, bravery, um, to have self-discipline, to have principles in the way that we approach life. And wokstape is to have wisdom and to have understanding. And that's a thing that we continue to develop throughout our lives, no matter how old we get, that, there's still room to learn and to grow. And I think also it provides helping for us to understand sometimes why we need to have rules, to have structure, to set boundaries, and to explain to children also why they need, some boundaries, and that, in order to protect them and to offer support or direction. So, it kind of keeps us as parents in a frame of mind of, what our responsibility is, as well as helping children to understand why we have to make certain decisions and structure for them. They offer guidance.
Children are considered sacred beings, and that we have a sacred obligation to protect our children, and that they're gifts from the Creator. And also understanding that your child might have an older spirit than you have, because you come back to earth and maybe live another life again. So to respect your children and the wisdom that they might come in with when they're born. Children will just really surprise us with some of the wisdom that they have, that they just come in with. And you have to respect that, but you also still have to parent them. So it's really important to have that sort of vision so that you're respecting that child. So that's the sacredness of our children.
I often talk about how prior to colonization, we had no social welfare program that was built into our cultures, into our societies, because it was expected that we cared for each other. And we really didn't have orphans, because if a child lost a parent, there were what now we call aunts and uncles to step into those roles. Within our tribal languages, I don't know if every single tribe is this way, but what I know is that there were not or are not words for aunt or uncle, but all of our relationships center around mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, and then, our other mothers and other fathers as it goes out. And our cousins are our brothers and sisters. So, the European classification of relationship creates distance. In Maria's dissertation, she interviewed some people whose parents attended boarding school, and they talked about, how they were parented. And for my doctoral dissertation, I followed up and did original research on parenting, because I thought, I wondered what the heck happened to our parents when our families with so many children in foster care or out of home placement, and, parents not raising their children. And I interviewed people who had attended boarding school also, and specifically focused on parenting issues. And so that's what, was I found was that people were, raised in a real kind of militaristic and cold method, where there was no love given. They were yelled at, they were punished, they were told a bell rang when they were supposed to get up in the morning, when they had to march to the dining hall, when they had to go to class, when they were to go to study hall, when they were to get ready for bed, and so on. So that's all they knew. And so they passed that parenting on to their children, and then their children passed it on to the next generation. So that's the intergenerational transmission.
now in Indian country, there's been a lot of more work on parenting and trying to help our people be better parents. But the thing that's been missing, I think, and something that we really emphasize is a lot of the parenting work sort of they focus on telling these parents how to be better parents. So what we've worked on is going back to square one and saying it's not your fault. This is a generational thing that we didn't bring on ourselves. It was, it was perpetrated against our people, and that so the parenting work that we try to do is to start from fresh and say it's not your fault. Look what happened to you and your parents and your grandparents and the punitive that, and that they need to so they need to heal for their own trauma in terms of the parenting that they got and the grandparenting that they got, and it's not their fault.
There's that saying about we don't know what we don't know. So it's like we can't know that we're missing the mark, so to speak, because we don't really know what happened to our people, and that traditionally there was a whole different way of parenting, and that was disrupted. How and why? And I think we kind of came upon this whole curriculum, I would say, as a matter of unfolding, because, and Maria can help me, but from what I remember is we were going to find a method that strengthens parenting knowledge. And I think it gives people, as we've said before, it gives them permission to say, oh, this is what happened, and this is what happened to my family. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to our people. And now I can understand why there's, quote, dysfunction, unquote, in our family system. And so, it gives them permission to heal, to work on themselves, and to not have to be the perfect parent, but to know that as long as they're working on it, that they're making progress. And it removes the shame of not being a perfect parent, or of having problems, or having an imperfect past.
Yeah, I think that the history is really, really important, and that we all, carry those things with us, that and so going back to those ways and that understanding again that the wakaheja, that the child is sacred, but so are the parents. They were children too at one point, and so trying to bring all of that back.
I've learned throughout this, and I'm still learning, that parenting is a sacred endeavor and a sacred responsibility, a sacred journey, so to speak. And that's where the intertwining of the mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional is so important, because there's ceremony for everything. And parenting actually began, in utero, with relating to the child, and the parents contemplating this role they're taking on. And there were ceremonies for at the birth of a child, and a special way of bringing a child into the world, into the circle, the family, the extended family, the community, and then on through life, such as, when a child reaches puberty for both females and males. So all of that knowledge is coming back. And fortunately, some of it has been retained by some of our spiritual people and elders so that we can reintegrate that back into parenting practices.
I remember one time I got really angry with my daughter about something, and then and I was like doing my finger, and then she looked at me like scared because I never spanked her, so luckily, and but when I saw this look on her face, oh, I apologized to her immediately so that it so that I wouldn't cause any further harm. And I said that I was wrong in the way I was worried. My intentions were good, but the punitive stuff from my parents, I kind of reenacted that, and then I never did that again. So it's really important for parents to also apologize to their children and explain. And we all make mistakes, but it's really good to say that to those children and apologize to them.
I think one of the most important things is that in order to raise healthy families, healthy children, we need to be healthy ourselves, to do our own work and model that for our children. And that the other thing is that learning, healing, and growing is lifelong, and that we don't have to have the expectation that we stop learning, or that we aren't able to continue to learn. And it's okay, no matter how old you are, to say, I'm still learning and growing, and that it's a process, and that it can lead to joy as well, and happiness and contentment and peace.